The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of red dust as Nora Ellsworth pressed her handkerchief against her nose, trying to shield herself from the grit that seemed determined to coat everything in its path. She clutched a small leather satchel to her chest, inside of which lay her most precious possession, packets of flower seeds carefully wrapped in cloth and paper. It was September of 1878, and she was 3 days into her journey to Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory, to marry a man she had never met. The advertisement had been simple enough. Rancher seeking wife, must be of good character and willing to work hard, preference for someone who appreciates the land. Contact Zack Xander, Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory. Nora had responded with equal simplicity, explaining that she was a woman of 22 years, recently orphaned when her parents succumbed to influenza in Boston, and that she had no remaining family to speak of. She had included a photograph and mentioned her love of gardening, though she wondered if such a detail would matter to a man seeking help with ranch work. His reply had been unexpectedly thoughtful. He wrote of his ranch 15 miles outside Santa Fe, of the vast sky and the way the sunset painted the mountains colors she had probably never seen in Boston. He wrote that he was 28 years old, that he had built his ranch from nothing over the past 6 years, and that while the land was harsh, it had its own kind of beauty if you knew how to look for it. He sent money for her passage and asked only that she give both him and New Mexico a fair chance before making any final decisions. The stagecoach lurched over another rut, and Nora's stomach turned with it. Whether from the motion or the nerves, she could not say. The other passengers, a portly merchant and an older woman who had introduced herself as Mrs. Whitmore, had long since given up attempting conversation. The heat was oppressive even as evening approached, and everyone seemed lost in their own thoughts or discomforts. "First time to New Mexico, Mrs. Whitmore asked suddenly, breaking the silence that had stretched for the better part of an hour. Nora nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Yes, madam. I have lived my entire life in Boston. Mail order bride." The question was asked without judgment, merely curiosity. "Yes," Nora answered, seeing no point in pretense. Mrs. Whitmore nodded knowingly. "My sister came out west the same way, 20 years back. Married a shopkeeper in Albuquerque. They have 7 children now and run the most successful dry goods store in 3 counties. It can work out just fine, dear, if both parties are willing to put in the effort." "I certainly hope so," Nora said softly, looking out at the landscape that grew more foreign with each passing mile. The greenery of the east had given way to something starker, more unforgiving. Yet there was something compelling about it too, the way the land seemed to stretch forever, the way the sky dominated everything beneath it. "Who are you marrying, if you do not mind my asking?" Zack Xander. "He has a ranch near Santa Fe." To Nora's surprise, Mrs. Whitmore's face brightened. "Zack Xander. Well, my dear, you have done well for yourself. He is a good man, from what I have heard. Came out here with nothing but determination and built himself a fine spread. Keeps to himself mostly, but he is honest and hard-working. He helped my nephew round up some stray cattle last year and would not accept more than a meal in thanks." Relief flooded through Nora's chest. She had worried, of course, about what kind of man would need to advertise for a wife, but Mrs. Whitmore's words eased some of her concerns. "Does he live very isolated?" Nora asked. "Most ranchers do, but his spread is not too far out. You will be able to come into town when needed. And once you settle in, I imagine you will find the community quite welcoming. We may be rough around the edges out here, but folks look after each other." The rest of the journey passed with Mrs. Whitmore sharing stories of life in New Mexico Territory, the challenges and the unexpected joys. By the time the stagecoach rolled into Santa Fe as the sun was setting, Nora felt marginally better prepared for what lay ahead. Santa Fe was unlike anything she had ever seen. The buildings were made of adobe, their earthen walls glowing warm in the fading light. The plaza bustled with activity even at this hour. Merchants were closing up their stalls, women carried baskets, and men stood in clusters talking. The air smelled of cooking fires and dust, and something spicy she could not identify. Miss Ellsworth. A deep voice spoke her name, and Nora turned to find herself looking up at a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of dark honey. He held his hat in his hands, and his dark brown hair was slightly mussed as though he had been running his fingers through it nervously. He wore simple ranch clothes, clean but worn, and his boots were dusty from travel. "Mr. Xander?" she asked, though something in her already knew. "Yes, madam, though I would prefer if you called me Zack." His voice was gentle, his manner respectful. He looked at her with an expression that was part hope, part uncertainty, and entirely genuine. "I hope your journey was not too difficult." "It was long," Nora admitted, "but I am here safely, and that is what matters." He smiled then, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something warmer. "I am glad. I have a room arranged for you at the hotel for tonight. I thought you might want to rest and freshen up before we talk properly. I will be staying at the boarding house across the street. Tomorrow morning, if you are agreeable, we can have breakfast and discuss how you would like to proceed." His consideration surprised her. She had half expected to be rushed into a wedding immediately or carted off to the ranch without ceremony. "That is very thoughtful. Thank you." Zack collected her trunk from the stagecoach, and Nora noticed the way he handled the weight easily despite its bulk. He walked her to the hotel, a modest but clean establishment just off the plaza, and spoke with the proprietor to ensure her room was ready. "I will meet you at the restaurant next door at 8 o'clock if that suits you," he said, lingering at the base of the stairs. "Unless you need more time." 8 o'clock will be fine," Nora assured him. He nodded, settled his hat back on his head, and took his leave. Nora watched him go, surprised to find that her first impression was favorable. He seemed kind, genuine, nothing like the gruff or desperate man she had sometimes imagined during her long journey west. Her room was small but comfortable, with a real bed and a washstand with fresh water. Nora cleaned the dust from her face and hands, changed into a fresh dress, and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The seeds were still in her satchel, and she took them out carefully, laying the packets on the small table by the window. Roses, delphiniums, hollyhocks, sweet peas, morning glories, zinnias. Her mother's garden had been full of them, and Nora had saved seeds for 2 years, not knowing then why she felt compelled to preserve them. Now they were all she had left of home, of the life she had known. She wondered if they would even grow in this harsh climate, so different from Boston's gentler seasons. But she had to try. These seeds represented more than just flowers. They were memory and hope intertwined, roots and new growth all at once. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night despite her nervousness. The bed was comfortable, and the exhaustion of travel claimed her quickly. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and for a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The journey, Santa Fe, Zack Xander waiting downstairs to have breakfast with the woman who had traveled across the country to potentially become his wife. Nora dressed carefully in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. Her auburn hair she pinned up neatly, allowing a few curls to frame her face. When she looked in the small mirror, she saw the same woman she had always been, perhaps a bit travel-worn, but her green eyes were clear and determined. Zack was already waiting at a table when she came down. He stood immediately, pulling out her chair with easy manners that spoke of a good upbringing. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and a straight nose that had been broken at least once. His hands were calloused and strong, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. But his eyes were gentle when they met hers, and that gentleness meant more to her than any physical attribute. "Did you sleep well?" he asked as they settled into their seats. "Better than I have in days," Nora admitted. "There is something about solid ground that I will never take for granted again after all that time in the stagecoach." He smiled. "I have never been back east, but I imagine the journey is not a pleasant one." "It had its moments," Nora said diplomatically, then decided honesty would serve them better than pleasantries. "But mostly it was long and uncomfortable, and I spent a great deal of time wondering what I was doing. Having second thoughts." He asked, and though his tone was light, she could see the concern in his eyes. "More like first thoughts," Nora said. "Everything happened so quickly after my parents died. Settling the estate, selling what little we had, responding to your advertisement. I did not have much time to really think about it until I was on that stagecoach with nothing but time." The waitress brought coffee and took their orders. When she left, Zack leaned forward slightly, his hands wrapped around his cup. "I want you to know that you do not have to rush into anything," he said. "I meant what I said in my letter. Give it a fair chance, give me a fair chance, but if you decide this is not what you want, I will make sure you have passage back east or wherever you want to go." His words should have relieved her, but instead they made her curious. "Why did you advertise for a wife? A man like you, from what I have heard, you could have your pick of local women." Zack looked down at his coffee, a slight flush coloring his neck. "The truth is, I have been so focused on building the ranch that I have not made much time for socializing. And the few women I have met in town, well, they want a different kind of life than I can offer. Town life, social gatherings, a house with a white picket fence right on Main Street. I love the land, Miss Ellsworth. I love the work and the solitude and the way you can see storms coming from miles away. I wanted someone who might appreciate that too, or at least not resent it." "My mother loved her garden," Nora said quietly. "More than anything else, I think. When my father's business struggled, when times were hard, she would go out to her garden and work until her hands were dirty and her back ached. She said the garden never judged her, never disappointed her. It gave back what she put into it, no more and no less. I think I understand loving the land." Zack's eyes lit up with interest. "You like gardening?" "I love it," Nora said simply. "I brought seeds with me, flowers from my mother's garden. I know it is silly bringing flower seeds to a working ranch, but I could not leave them behind." "It is not silly at all," Zack said, and the warmth in his voice made her look up. "The ranch is not just about cattle and horses, it is home. And a home should have some beauty in it, some softness. I would like to see flowers growing there. I think they would be welcome." Their breakfast arrived and they ate while continuing to talk. Zack told her about the ranch, about the house he had built himself with help from his neighbors. He described the land, the challenges of ranching in New Mexico territory, the beauty of the mountains in the distance. Nora told him about Boston, about her parents, about the life she had left behind. The conversation flowed more easily than she had expected, and she found herself laughing at his stories of ranch mishaps and near disasters. "There is something I need to ask," Nora said finally as they were finishing their meal, "and I hope you will answer honestly." "Of course," Zack said, his expression serious. "What are you expecting from a wife? I need to know what you truly want, not what you think I want to hear." Zack was quiet for a long moment, clearly considering his words carefully. "I want a partner," he said finally. "Someone who will work alongside me, not because she has to, but because we are building something together. I want someone I can talk to at the end of the day, someone who understands that the ranch is not just work, it is a way of life. I want honesty and respect, and if we are fortunate, affection that grows into something more. I will not lie to you, Miss Ellsworth. I have been alone for a long time and I am lonely, but I do not want just anyone. I want someone who chooses to be there, who wants the life I am offering." Nora felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of tension she had been carrying since Boston. "I can offer you all of that," she said. "But I need time. Time to know you, to understand this place, to decide if I can truly make it my home." "Then take all the time you need," Zack said. "I have a proposal if you are willing to hear it. Come out to the ranch with me. Stay in the guest room, it has a proper door and a lock. You will have complete privacy. See the place, see what the life is really like. If after a few weeks you decide you want to move forward with the marriage, we can arrange it. If you decide it is not for you, I will respect that choice." It was more than fair, more than generous. Nora nodded slowly. "I accept your proposal. When would we leave?" "Tomorrow morning, if that suits you. I need to pick up some supplies today and you might want to look around town a bit, get your bearings." They spent the rest of the day together, Zack showing her around Santa Fe while he ran his errands. The town was fascinating, a blend of Spanish, Mexican, and American influences that created something entirely unique. The plaza was the heart of everything, surrounded by shops and homes. Nora bought a few necessary items for herself, and Zack introduced her to several townspeople, always careful to explain that she was considering marriage but that nothing was decided yet. She appreciated his honesty, the way he gave her the dignity of choice. That evening, as they parted ways again, Zack said, "I want you to know, Miss Ellsworth, that regardless of what you decide, I am glad you came. It has been a long time since I have had anyone to talk to like this. Call me Nora," she said, "and I am glad I came too." The next morning dawned clear and bright. Nora packed her trunk, making sure the seed packets were secure in her satchel, and met Zack at the livery where he had arranged for a wagon. Her trunk was loaded along with the supplies he had purchased, and then they were off, heading out of Santa Fe toward the ranch that might become her home. The landscape was stunning in its starkness. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding snow despite the September warmth. The land itself was covered in scrub brush and dotted with pinon and juniper trees. The sky seemed impossibly vast, a dome of blue that dwarfed everything beneath it. Nora found herself understanding what Zack had tried to describe in his letters. There was a beauty here, different from anything she had known, but beauty nonetheless. "It is so open," she said, watching the land roll past. "In Boston, everything is crowded together, buildings and people and noise. Here it feels like you could breathe deeper." Zack smiled. "That is exactly how I feel about it. Some people find it too empty, too lonely. But for me, this is freedom." They talked as they traveled, the conversation ranging from serious to lighthearted. Nora learned that Zack had come west from Missouri after his parents died, that he had worked as a ranch hand for years before saving enough to buy his own land. He talked about the early days, living in a tent while he built the first rough cabin, nearly losing everything to drought his second year, slowly building up his herd. "It has not been easy," he admitted, "but it is mine. Every fence post, every head of cattle, every board in the house. I built it with my own hands and my own sweat. That means something." "I can see why it does," Nora said. "My father never owned anything, really. We always rented, always owed someone. He would have understood what you have accomplished." When they crested a rise and Zack said, "There it is," Nora leaned forward eagerly. The ranch spread out before them in a valley between low hills. The house was larger than she had expected, built of wood with a covered porch along the front. There were several outbuildings, corrals, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing. A creek cut through the property, its banks lined with cottonwood trees that provided the only real greenery in sight. "It is beautiful," Nora said, and meant it. There was something solid about it, something real and permanent that called to something deep inside her. "Wait until you see inside before you make any judgments," Zack said, but she could hear the pleasure in his voice at her reaction. The house was simple but well built. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace taking up most of one wall. There were two bedrooms, one that was clearly Zack's and a smaller one that he indicated would be hers. Both had real beds, real doors, real windows with glass. The furniture was handmade but sturdy, and everything was surprisingly clean for a bachelor's home. "I have been cleaning for a week," Zack admitted sheepishly when she commented on it. "Wanted to make a good impression." "You have," Nora assured him, looking around with genuine appreciation. The house had good bones, as her father would have said. It was a place that could become a real home with time and care. Over the next few days, they fell into a cautious routine. Nora would wake early and make breakfast while Zack handled the morning chores. They would eat together, and then he would head out to work on whatever needed doing that day: fences, checking cattle, countless tasks that kept a ranch running. Nora spent her time exploring the house and the immediate area around it, learning the rhythms of this new place. She found herself watching Zack when he did not know she was looking. The way he moved with easy confidence, the way he was gentle with the horses, the way he always washed up before coming to meals. He was patient with her questions, never making her feel foolish for not knowing something about ranch life. And he was true to his word about giving her space. He never pushed, never presumed, always respectful of the boundaries between them. On the fourth day, Nora woke to find the morning cool and cloudy, the first hint of autumn in the air. After breakfast, as Zack was preparing to head out, she said, "I would like to plant my seeds today. Do you think there is a good place for a garden?" Zack's face lit up. "There is a spot on the south side of the house, gets good sun, and it is close to the creek, so watering would not be too difficult. I can help you prepare the soil if you would like." "I would appreciate that." They spent the morning working together, Zack using a shovel to turn the soil while Nora removed rocks and broke up clods of earth. It was hard work, and within an hour, Nora's back ached and her hands were dirty. But there was something deeply satisfying about it, about working the earth, about preparing a place for new growth. "The soil here is different from what you are used to," Zack said, pausing to wipe his forehead. "It is drier, has more clay. You might need to amend it some, add some manure from the barn to help it along." They did just that, mixing in the composted manure until the soil looked richer, more promising. By early afternoon, they had a plot about 10 feet by 10 feet ready for planting. Nora retrieved her precious seed packets from her room and knelt at the edge of the prepared garden. Zack knelt beside her, watching as she carefully opened the first packet. "These are from my mother's garden," she said softly. "Every one of them. I have been saving seeds for 2 years now. I do not even know if they will grow here, but I have to try." "They will grow," Zack said with quiet confidence. "Maybe not all of them, but enough. The land here is hard, but it is not dead. Things grow if you give them half a chance and a little care." They planted together, Zack following Nora's instructions on depth and spacing. She had brought roses, which would need to establish well before winter, delphiniums that might struggle with the heat but were worth trying, hollyhocks that she thought might do well. sweet peas for their fragrance, morning glories because they were hardy and would climb, and zinnias because they loved sun and heat. As they worked, Zack said, "Tell me about your mother's garden. What was it like?" Nora sat back on her heels, a packet of seeds in her dirty hands. It was not large, just a small patch behind our house, but she filled it with color. In spring, there were tulips and daffodils. Summer brought the roses and the delphiniums, the hollyhocks that grew taller than I was. Fall had the chrysanthemums. She worked in that garden every day, weather permitting. Sometimes I think she was happiest there. She sounds like a special woman. She was, and patient. She taught me everything about gardening, about how to save seeds, how to prepare soil, when to plant what. I did not realize until after she was gone how much she was giving me, how many hours she spent teaching me something I would carry with me always. They finished planting as the afternoon shadows grew long. Zack helped Nora water the newly planted seeds, carrying bucket after bucket from the creek, until the soil was thoroughly soaked. As they stood looking at the freshly planted garden, Zack said quietly, "Plant them and plant roots with me here." Nora turned to look at him, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "I know you have not decided anything yet," he continued, meeting her eyes, "and I am not trying to pressure you. But seeing you plant these seeds, something that means so much to you, something from your mother, here on my land, our land if you choose it, it means something to me. It feels like maybe you are thinking about staying, about putting down roots here with me." Nora's heart was beating hard in her chest. "I am thinking about it," she admitted. "More than thinking about it. Being here, seeing this place, getting to know you, it feels right in a way I did not expect." Zack reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle. "I know it has only been a few days, and I know we still have so much to learn about each other, but I want you to know that I would be honored if you chose to stay. Not just for the help with the ranch or to ease loneliness, but because I am starting to care for you, Nora Ellsworth. And I think, if we give it time, we could build something good here together." "I think we could too," Nora said softly, not pulling her hand away. "I am not ready to marry tomorrow, but I am ready to say that I am staying. I want to see these seeds grow. I want to see what we can build together." The smile that broke across Zack's face was like sunrise, warming everything it touched. "That is more than I hoped for. We will take it slow, let things grow naturally, like the garden." That evening they sat on the porch together as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Zack told her more about the ranch, his plans for the future, and his hopes for what they could accomplish together. Nora talked about the garden she wanted to plant, vegetables as well as flowers, maybe even some fruit trees if they could establish them. "I never thought about fruit trees," Zack admitted. "Always seemed like too much work for uncertain reward. But if you want to try, we can order some saplings come spring." "Apple trees," Nora said dreamily, "and maybe cherries if they would grow here." "We will make it work," Zack promised. "Whatever you want to try, we will make it work." The days began to pass more quickly. Nora fell into the rhythms of ranch life, learning as she went. She could not yet ride well, but Zack was teaching her, patient with her nervousness around the large horses. She learned to cook on the wood stove, adapting her recipes to what was available. She cleaned and organized the house, adding small touches that made it feel more like a home, and she checked her garden every day, watching anxiously for the first signs of growth. Zack had been right about the land. Within 2 weeks, she saw the first green shoots pushing through the soil. The zinnias came up first, enthusiastic and fast-growing. Then the morning glories, their vines already reaching for something to climb. The hollyhocks were slower but steady. The sweet peas were sparse, not all the seeds taking to this new climate, but enough that she would have some. The delphiniums struggled, and she accepted that they might not make it, that some things from her old life would not translate to this new one. But the roses, to her delight and relief, established themselves with determined vigor. "They like it here," Zack said one evening as they walked through the garden together. "Stubborn plants for stubborn land." "My mother always said roses were survivors," Nora replied, gently touching a leaf. "They look delicate, but they have thorns and deep roots. They know how to protect themselves and how to hold on." "Like you," Zack said softly. Nora looked up at him, surprised. In the fading light, his face was gentle, his eyes warm. Over the weeks they had grown comfortable with each other, their conversations easy and ranging. But there had been a carefulness too, both of them aware that they were building towards something but not rushing it. Now, something in the air felt different, charged with a possibility that had been waiting. "I do not feel very strong most of the time," Nora admitted. "I feel like I am making everything up as I go, hoping I do not make some terrible mistake." "That is what everyone does," Zack said. "We just do not talk about it much. But you are strong, Nora. You left everything you knew, traveled across the country to start a new life. That takes courage." "Or desperation," Nora said with a slight laugh. "Maybe both. Maybe it does not matter which. You are here and you are trying, and that is what counts." They stood in the growing darkness, the garden around them a promise of beauty to come. Crickets were beginning their evening song, and somewhere in the distance cattle lowed. The air smelled of earth and water and growing things. "Zack," Nora said quietly, "I am ready, not for everything but for more. I want to move forward." He understood immediately what she was saying. "Are you certain? I do not want you to feel rushed." "I am certain. We could marry quietly in town. I am not asking for a courtship exactly. We are past that, living here together even with all propriety observed. I am asking to make this official, to truly start our life together." Zack took both her hands in his. "Then yes. Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next week, whenever you are ready." "Next week," Nora decided. "That will give us time to arrange things properly. Nothing fancy, just the necessary legalities and perhaps a few witnesses." "I will make the arrangements," Zack promised. That night, Nora lay in her bed and looked out the window at the star-filled sky. She thought about her mother's garden in Boston, now tended by strangers if it was tended at all. She thought about the seeds she had brought, now growing in New Mexico soil. She thought about Zack, about the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked, the way he had never once made her feel less than his equal. She had come west expecting duty, perhaps companionship if she was fortunate. She had not expected to feel this growing warmth in her chest when Zack smiled at her. She had not expected to care about his dreams as much as her own. She had not expected to find, in this harsh and beautiful land, the possibility of real happiness. The next week passed in a flurry of preparation. Nora altered her best dress, a deep green that Zack said brought out her eyes. Zack bought a new shirt and had his one suit cleaned and pressed. They rode into Santa Fe together, and Zack spoke with the local priest who agreed to perform the ceremony. Mrs. Whitmore, who Nora had met on the stagecoach, was delighted to be asked to serve as witness, along with the proprietor of the mercantile where Zack did business. The ceremony itself was simple and brief, held in the small church just off the plaza. Nora wore her green dress and carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that Zack had picked that morning. Zack wore his suit and looked almost uncomfortable in the formal clothing, but his eyes never left her face as they spoke their vows. "I, Zack Xander, take you, Nora Ellsworth, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to honor you, to work alongside you, to build a life with you in honesty and respect. I promise to care for you in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad. This I swear before God and these witnesses." Nora's voice was steady as she made her own vows. "I, Nora Ellsworth, take you, Zack Xander, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to stand beside you to build our home together, to face whatever comes with courage and honesty. I promise to honor the life we are creating, to tend it as carefully as I tend my garden. This I swear before God and these witnesses." The priest pronounced them married, and Zack kissed her softly, chastely, a promise of things to come. Mrs. Whitmore cried happily, and the mercantile owner pumped Zack's hand enthusiastically. They had a simple meal at the restaurant where they had eaten their first breakfast together, and then they headed back to the ranch as the afternoon sun blazed overhead. Nora felt strange, both different and exactly the same. She was married now, truly committed to this new life. But it did not feel frightening. It felt right. That night, there was awkwardness between them that had not existed before. They were married, but they were still learning each other, still finding their way. Zack kissed her good night at her bedroom door, his lips gentle against hers. "We have time," he said softly. "We have all the time we need. No rush." Nora appreciated his patience even as she felt her own growing desire to truly become his wife in every sense. But he was right. They had time. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened naturally. They learned each other's rhythms, preferences, irritations. Zack learned that Nora did not like to be spoken to before she had her morning coffee. Nora learned that Zack sometimes had nightmares and would wake before dawn, needing to work off whatever demons haunted him. They learned to work together, to anticipate each other's needs, to communicate without always needing words. And slowly, carefully, they became truly husband and wife. There was nervousness that first time, but also tenderness and growing passion. Zack was patient, gentle, taking time to learn what pleased her. And Nora found that she enjoyed this physical closeness, this ultimate intimacy. It became another way they communicated, another way they were learning to be together. The garden continued to grow, and as October brought cooler temperatures, the flowers bloomed. The zinnias were a riot of color, bright oranges and pinks and yellows that seemed almost defiant against the muted tones of the landscape. The morning glories climbed the trellis Zack had built, their blue flowers opening each morning and closing each afternoon. The hollyhocks stood tall and proud, their blooms ranging from white to deep red. The roses had not bloomed yet, needing more time to establish, but their bushes were healthy and strong. One evening, as they stood admiring the garden together, Nora said, "I never thought they would do this well. I was so afraid they would all die." "You took good care of them," Zack said, his arm around her waist. "Good soil, good water, and attention. That is all most things need to thrive." "Is that what we have?" Nora asked, leaning into him. "Good soil and water and attention, I think so," Zack said. "I know I am happier than I have been in years, maybe ever. This house is a home now, not just a place I sleep, and that is because of you." "It is because of both of us," Nora corrected. "We are building this together." As winter approached, the garden began to fade, but Nora carefully collected seeds from the flowers, already planning for next year's planting. She would expand the garden, she decided, and maybe add a vegetable patch as well. She wanted to can and preserve, to see the fruits of her labor sustaining them through the winter. The ranch kept them busy as they prepared for the cold months. Cattle had to be moved to winter pastures, hay had to be stored, repairs had to be made before the weather turned. Nora learned more about ranch work, helping where she could, learning to appreciate the endless labor that went into keeping everything running. In November, the first snow fell. transforming the landscape into something magical. Nora stood on the porch, wrapped in one of Zack's heavy coats, watching the flakes fall. Zack came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I am happy," Nora said simply. "I did not expect that when I left Boston. I thought maybe I would find security or at least a tolerable life, but I found happiness instead." "I am glad," Zack said, his breath warm against her ear. "You have given me that too. This place was just a ranch before. Now it is a home and I have someone to share it with." Winter settled in, bringing cold and snow and long nights. But inside the house, there was warmth and light and growing love. Zack taught Nora to play chess using a set he had carved himself, and they spent many evenings in competition, laughing and teasing. Nora read aloud from books she had brought from Boston, stories and poetry that Zack had never heard before. They cooked together, learning to make meals that pleased them both. And they talked, long conversations about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds as thoroughly as they had learned each other's bodies. Christmas came, and they exchanged simple gifts. Zack gave Nora new gardening tools he had ordered from a catalog, the handles smooth and well-made. Nora gave Zack a shirt she had sewn herself, the stitching careful and even. They attended Christmas services in town and had dinner with Mrs. Whitmore and her family, beginning to build connections in the community. As the new year of 1879 arrived, they stood together on the porch, looking out at the snow-covered land. "What do you hope for this year?" Nora asked. "More of the same," Zack said. "More time with you, more growth for the ranch, maybe some good luck with the cattle prices. What about you?" "I want to see the roses bloom," Nora said. "I want to expand the garden," and she hesitated, then continued, "I think I would like to start a family if that is something you want too." Zack turned to her, his eyes bright in the darkness. "I want that very much, but only if you are ready. It is hard out here, especially for women giving birth." "I know," Nora said, "but I am strong and we will manage. We always do." He kissed her then, deep and promising, and later that night they made love with a new sense of purpose and hope. Winter slowly gave way to spring, and with the thaw, work on the ranch intensified. Calving season brought long days and nights, and Nora learned to help where she could. She was amazed by the process of new life, these gangly calves struggling to their feet, already fighting to survive. In late March, as she was working in the garden preparing for spring planting, Nora realized that her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week to be certain, then told Zack one evening over dinner. "I think I am pregnant," she said simply. The look on Zack's face was everything she could have hoped for, joy and wonder and a touch of fear, all mixed together. He came around the table and pulled her to her feet, holding her carefully as though she might break. "Are you certain?" he asked. "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there. We will go to town tomorrow. We will make sure, and we will talk to the doctor about what you need, what we need to do to keep you healthy." They did just that, and the doctor confirmed what Nora already knew. She was pregnant, probably about 6 weeks along. The baby would come sometime in early November if all went well. "You are healthy and strong," the doctor said. "That is in your favor, but childbirth is always a risk, especially out here. Make sure you are eating well, getting rest when you can. And when your time comes, send for me or the midwife, Mrs. Chen. She lives about 5 miles from your ranch and has delivered more babies than I have." The pregnancy progressed well through the spring and summer. Nora's garden flourished, and in May, the roses finally bloomed. They were not as large or prolific as they had been in Boston, but they were beautiful nonetheless, their petals soft and fragrant. Nora cried when she saw them, overwhelmed with emotion. Her mother's roses, growing here in New Mexico, thriving despite the change in climate and soil. It felt like a blessing, like her mother's approval from beyond the grave. Zack was attentive and worried, constantly concerned that Nora was working too hard. She had to remind him repeatedly that she was pregnant, not dying, and that she was perfectly capable of tending her garden and helping around the house. But she appreciated his concern, the way he would rub her feet in the evening when they were swollen, the way he made sure she always had water and shade when she was working outside. As summer heated up, Nora found herself tiring more easily. Her belly swelled with their growing child, and simple tasks became more difficult. But she was happy, deeply and thoroughly happy in a way she had never imagined possible. She loved Zack, truly loved him, and he loved her. It was evident in every look, every touch, every word spoken between them. In early November, as predicted, Nora went into labor. Zack had sent for Mrs. Chen 2 days earlier when Nora said she thought her time was near, and the midwife had been staying in the guest room, waiting. Labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Zack paced outside, occasionally allowed in to hold Nora's hand and give her encouragement. Mrs. Chen was calm and competent, guiding Nora through the process with the ease of long experience. Finally, as the afternoon sun slanted through the window, Nora gave a final push, and their child was born. A boy, small but healthy, with a strong cry that filled the room. "You have a son," Mrs. Chen said, laying the baby on Nora's chest. "A beautiful, healthy son." Nora looked down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the searching eyes, and felt her heart expand in a way that was almost painful. This was her child, hers and Zack's, born of love and hope and the new life they had built together. Zack came in, his face pale with worry that transformed to wonder when he saw his son. "He is perfect," he whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one calloused finger. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this." They named him William, after Nora's father, with the middle name of James, after Zack's father. William James Xander, a name that honored both their pasts while looking toward the future. The first months with William were exhausting but joyful. Nora had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never been so fulfilled. Zack was a devoted father, taking William in the evenings so Nora could rest, walking the floor with him when he cried, looking at his son with such love that it made Nora's heart ache. Winter came again, but this time with a child to care for. The season felt different. The house was full of life and noise, William's cries and coos, his gummy smiles that made all the sleepless nights worthwhile. Spring brought new lambs and calves, and William was old enough now to watch with wide eyes from his mother's arms. The garden was planted again, expanded as Nora had planned. She worked with William strapped to her back in a sling Mrs. Whitmore had helped her make, his weight a pleasant burden as she tended the growing things. The roses bloomed again that May, larger and more abundant than before. Nora cut several and brought them inside, arranging them in a jar on the kitchen table. That evening, as they sat together after William had been put to bed, Nora said, "I want to write to Mrs. Whitmore's sister, the one who runs the dry goods store in Albuquerque. She might know other mail-order brides, women who are thinking about coming west. I want to tell them it can work out. That you can find real happiness, real love, even when you start with nothing but hope and a newspaper advertisement." Zack took her hand, raising it to his lips. "You found more than happiness here. You brought it with you in those seed packets. You planted them, and in planting them, you planted roots for both of us. You made this place a home, Nora. You gave me a family. We did it together," Nora said, as she always did. "Everything we have, we built together. Years passed, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Nora's gardens expanded to include vegetables, herbs, and even a small orchard of apple trees that, against odds, thrived. The flower gardens became something of a landmark, people traveling from town just to see the riot of color in such an unlikely place. William grew into a sturdy boy, followed 3 years later by a sister they named Sarah, and 2 years after that by another son, Thomas. The house rang with the noise of children, and sometimes Nora longed for the quiet early days, but mostly she was grateful for the abundance of life around her. Zack's hair began to show silver at the temples, and Nora's hands developed calluses that would never quite go away. But they were happy, deeply and thoroughly happy in the life they had created together. One evening, when William was 10 and already helping seriously with ranch work, they stood together in the garden as they had done so many times before. The roses were in full bloom, their descendants from those original seeds that Nora had brought from Boston. They had spread over the years, and now there was a whole border of them along the south side of the house. "You ever regret it?" Zack asked. "Leaving Boston, coming out here to marry a stranger," Nora laughed. "Never, not even once. This is my home, you are my home. Everything good in my life started when I got on that stagecoach. You changed my life," Zack said seriously. "I was just existing before, just working and sleeping and working again. You taught me how to really live, how to find beauty in everyday things, how to love and be loved." "You did the same for me," Nora said. "I was so lost after my parents died. I thought I was just looking for security, for a place to belong, but I found so much more." They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. From inside the house, they could hear the children playing, their laughter bright and carefree. The cattle were settling for the night, the horses quiet in their corral. The garden breathed around them, green and growing and alive. William Ellsworth had loved his daughter's garden, and now Nora's own children would grow up with gardens of their own. She had brought her mother's seeds west, planted them in foreign soil, and they had flourished. Just as she had flourished, just as her love with Zack had flourished, just as their whole life together had flourished despite the odds. "Plant them and plant roots with me here," Zack had said all those years ago. And she had, and the roots had gone deep, anchoring her to this place, this man, this life. And from those roots had grown something beautiful, something that would continue to grow and spread and bloom for years to come. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Nora leaned against her husband, content in the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The Wild West had been wild indeed, harsh and unforgiving and demanding. But it had also been generous, giving back more than she had dreamed possible to those willing to work for it, to fight for it, to love it. The children grew and eventually had children of their own. William took over more and more of the ranch work as Zack aged, eventually inheriting the spread that his father had built from nothing. Sarah married a teacher from Santa Fe, and together they opened a school in town. Thomas became a rancher like his father, buying land nearby and raising cattle. Zack and Nora had many years together, watching their children and grandchildren grow, watching the ranch and the gardens continue to thrive. They celebrated 50 years of marriage with a party that brought together family and friends from all over the territory. By then, New Mexico was no longer a territory but a state, and the wild days of the Old West were fading into memory. But the garden remained, tended now by multiple generations. The roses that Nora had brought from Boston still bloomed every spring, hardier now, adapted to the New Mexico climate but retaining the beauty that had made them precious. They were a living memorial to a journey taken in faith, to risks rewarded, to love found in unexpected places. Zack died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78 with Nora holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, but she did not break. She had learned long ago, from both her mother and from the land that life went on, that new growth always came, that endings were also beginnings. Nora lived another 5 years, tending her gardens until the very end. When she died at the age of 75, she was buried next to Zack on the ranch, under the shade of one of the apple trees they had planted together so many years before. Her children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren stood around her grave, mourning but also celebrating a life well lived. And every spring, the roses bloomed, the descendants of those seeds carefully saved by a woman in Boston who could not have known where they would eventually grow, who could not have imagined the life they would symbolize. But she would have been happy, Nora's mother, to know that her garden lived on, that the careful tending and love she had put into those flowers had crossed a continent and taken root in alien soil, that they had become part of something larger and more beautiful than she could have dreamed. The story of Nora Ellsworth and Zack Xander became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The mail-order bride who brought flower seeds west, and the cowboy who saw in those seeds not just flowers but possibility, not just beauty but hope, who told her to plant them and plant roots with him, and who built a love and a life that flourished against all odds, that bloomed in the harsh New Mexico landscape, as brilliantly and impossibly as those Boston roses. Their great-great-grandchildren still live on the ranch, still tend the gardens, still marvel at the roses that refuse to die, that come back year after year, hardy and beautiful and enduring. The house has been expanded and modernized, but the original structure that Zack built with his own hands still stands at its heart. And in the living room, in a place of honor, hangs a photograph of Nora and Zack on their 50th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, their faces lined with age but their eyes still bright with love. The photograph sits next to a framed collection of seed packets, preserved carefully behind glass. Roses, delphiniums, hollyhocks, sweet peas, morning glories, zinnias. The labels are faded now, barely legible, but they are treasured nonetheless. They represent a beginning, a choice made in faith, a journey taken in hope. They represent everything that came after, all the growth and bloom and fruit that sprang from seeds planted with love in unlikely soil. And every spring, when the roses bloom, the family gathers to celebrate Planting Day, a tradition started by Nora and Zack's children and continued ever since. They work together to tend the gardens, to plant new seeds alongside the old, to remember the story of the mail-order bride and the cowboy, the flower seeds and the deep roots, the love that flourished in the Wild West, and the legacy that continues to bloom generations later. Because that is what true love does. It plants roots, deep and strong. It weathers storms and droughts and harsh seasons. It adapts and endures. And from those roots grows life, abundant and beautiful, spreading and flourishing and bearing fruit that nourishes not just one generation but many. Nora and Zack understood this in their bones, in the way they lived and loved and built their life together. And their understanding, like their roses, continues to bloom, a gift passed down through time, a reminder that love can take root anywhere if tended with care, that beauty can flourish in the harshest places, and that sometimes the most precious things we bring with us are not the tangible objects but the hope and determination to plant them and watch them grow.